Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brendan Hauser with EVOQ Bike. We've got a great podcast today with Noah Granigan, who you may know from doing some more European stage races back in the wildlife days. Now on the U.S. crit scene, we talk about the training differences and similarities between those two nationals, the new course, and what it's like going up against the World Tour athletes there. A couple, maybe not supplements, but other things besides the macros that he's taking advantage of, and just consistency in training, and then some nitty gritty VO2 and neuromuscular sessions that he does almost all year long. Everybody, good luck with your training racing. Hopefully, you can get something from this podcast to help you get faster, and we'll talk to you soon. Noah, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. Let's start with a quick intro, actually. Let's jump into it and tell us who's Noah Granigan and maybe give us a little background of yourself as an athlete, maybe not even just cyclist.
My name's Noah Granigan. Race with the Miami Blazers and focus on Criteriums in the USA. Kind of second year that I've been racing mostly crits in the States. Kind of as an athlete. Started, in cycling super early. I think when I was 9, I was like racing up in like the 10 to 12 age group. The nationals were in Pennsylvania, close to where I grew up. So I haven't missed a national championship since 2006. So got a pretty good streak there, especially for
wild, dude.
For being for only being 28. Guess it's getting up there there's a lot of younger guys than me now, so that's taking a little bit to get used to. But so I've been in the sport for a while. I'm the fourth generation of my family to race bikes like internationally. Great grandpa rode the Olympic trials way back when it was a trials, and winner, top 3 in the trials go to the Olympics. The story is he got a flat tire. Then my both grandparents raced. Grandpa still does some racing. They're both in the U.S. Bicycling Hall of Fame as contributors to the sport. So kind of in all different aspects, she's been involved with cycling for pretty much since they were teenagers. And then kind of skipped a generation. My mom raced only until she realized that she didn't have to. And then so she started. There's a good story where she's at a race and my grandpa says, "Beth, it doesn't look like you're having fun." She's like, "Well, I'm really not." She's like, why are you doing these bike races?" And she's like, "Well, don't I have to? Because you and mom do." So that was the end of her cycling career. And then me, my brother, and 2 cousins kind of got into it. We all got these like old Perry Sport new old stock bikes, made in France, sticker on the top tube, when we were in between 9 and 12 years old, and kind of all started racing. And me and my cousin Dag kind of stuck with it throughout juniors as brother and cousin kind of did other sports, and then I'm the only one still doing it, but see family and we'll always get out for a ride in the woods doing something, and then it was mostly road, a little bit of track and cyclocross. Raced at CU, went to school, did all kinds of racing for the CU team while racing mostly in the US. And then after school, kind of went with wildlife and did the kind of European, Asia, all over race schedule to try to, make something happen and make the jump in stage racing. But mostly wasn't able to kind of make that next step. And as wildlife generation folded, it was as US, the crit scene was kind of really still growing and making those jumps that it's been making even since since the pandemic. It's been the successful part of road racing. The only kind of part that's like actually still growing quite a bit, getting more popularity. So kind of as that European stage race door closed for me, this door kind of just swung open, and yeah, the past 2 years just been focusing on crits, which even when I was doing stage races, like, you'd get to crit day in a US stage race, and I was always jazzed about that. So yeah, it was now to just to be kind of focusing on that. It's yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm loving it.
That's interesting to hear. I was curious where your mind was of doing mostly crits, but kind of knowing the stage race background. And I know a lot of people that will listen, they get to crit day and they're like, man, I wish this wasn't part of the stage race. And there's other guys that
Yeah.
are loving it. So I love to hear where you're at with that. What's, if you wouldn't mind sharing, when you look back at the wildlife days, what do you think you were missing from making the stage racing happen and making that next leap?
Um, think I think I got. It took me a while to get the depth needed to kind of compete at that level, and just like versatility. Like I think I look back at like my U23 years, and you're doing, like, I was a full-time student at CU, and like I don't have, just like training wise, like I looked forward to crits because I could do an hour as hard as anybody else. But then you get to those 5-hour days, and I didn't have that, like, go hard in the last hour, which you can't fake that. You need to have those stage races kind of in the legs, and have that, like, that kind of, yeah, just that volume and depth to be able to go deep late in races or late in stage races. And so it took me kind of those 2 years at Wildlife of doing that type of racing. And you do an 8-day stage race after 8-day stage race after 8-day stage race, and you're gonna get it. Like, it'll come. And then, like, I think it just wasn't, like, I didn't capitalize on that early enough. Like, it just took too long, kind of in that process, for me to have that, ability to win these, like, super hard races. Not like I've actually won a bunch of really hard races, but I've had some success, and it just took a while for me to get that, like, versatility, sprinting, climbing, and just kind of just hard racing. It was kind of like, when I started out at Wildlife, I was like the sprinter on the team, where it's not like I was ever, doing massive watts. Like, even compared to guys in the US, like, I don't have a super high, 20-second or peak or whatever you want to look at. But I was good at, at 200 meters, I'll be third wheel and, able to open up the sprint. Like, I was good at that, like, following and, fighting and positioning. So yeah, trying to kind of capitalize on that. And that's, tough, especially at that level. Like, you're doing Tour of Turkey, and it's like, all right, we've got, the Philipsen lead out, the Caleb Ewan lead out, the Cavendish lead out. Like, it was just like, okay, now we're here racing at this level. It's just a bit different when you need to, like, step up to that stage. And yeah, it just wasn't ready to kind of make that next step, I guess. And then kind of as I, raced more at that level, I had just more general fitness, and was, all of a sudden we're into year 2 at Wildlife, and we're getting ready for Tour of Turkey. And I go from, like, the year before, it's like, all right, let's try to sneak in, a top 5, kind of get on the right wheel, get a podium, to, like, all right, I'm climbing well. Like, we're doing the KOM jersey. Like, we can win a leader's jersey here. So that just, like, kind of shifted my idea of, like, kind of what I could do as a rider, which was pretty interesting. Just, like, going from, like, thinking I'm, like, a sprinter, which, like, I'm still good at sprinting, but, like, kind of just with that much racing, like that, just, like, kind of seeing, you just gain, like, a new ability of, I can do 20 minutes with at the front of a field like this, and even racing like the GC guys get some like KOM points at the top of a Cat 2, Cat 1. It's like, oh, this is not what I've been used to doing, but it's here now, so let's take advantage of it, and new targets and stuff. And then you can kind of like come back into racing like in the States, and it's like, okay, I can go for GC at Joe Martin now. Like I've never even, like I was always just like kind of soft pedaling the TT and focus on the 2 sprint days, and now it's like, oh yeah, I can I can race these completely differently from how I've raced Joe Martin the past like 6 years now. So yeah, it's kind of changed, and I guess that was just pretty interesting to kind of like learn about myself and what I can do.
I mean, dude, it's wild. For people that don't know that you won the stage on Joe Martin ahead of, I'm actually Googling because I know Tyler was up there. Tyler Eder Fryer was second.
Yeah.
Sergio Hanau fourth. I mean, Scott McGill sixth. Johnny Clef. Yeah, like dude, just hit squad. Johnny was on your team actually, I think, that year. Yeah, and Scott.
Yeah, he was in yellow. Yep.
And so you're not super tiny. You're, how much do you weigh?
75 kilos.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty, like 6'3". So
yeah,
not much to me in terms. I'm pretty tall. Where a lot of my weight comes from, but yeah, definitely one of the bigger guys.
It's
especially for like a day like Sequoia.
Yes. And it's inspiring for the people that are listening who are taller and thinking like, I can't climb because I'm just tall. It's like, no. I mean, look at what Noah's doing. So that's huge for people to hear.
Yeah.
What's, okay, so then everything shifts more to crit style. Let's kind of talk about your training. And you've dropped some just really interesting comments about how it almost seems like what I was hearing, like it was surprising you, the changes that you're seeing from doing all these races. And then that door sort of shuts. Did you change anything massively thinking now, hey, I'm going to be doing these shorter races? Do you still train volume a lot? Or maybe we should even start with you in the stage race wildlife time frame. What was, when we just talk about training, like what was your bread and butter? What were you doing the most of then, if you can recall?
Yeah. Even like for like 8-day, stage races all over the world, I'm still doing, a lot of volume, nothing crazy, 20, 25-hour weeks pretty consistently. But then doing just like a lot of VO2, and even, just like neuromuscular stuff, like year round, which I think is kind of, I guess, not so common. People kind of, lay off the intensity kind of in the off season. Whereas I kind of just am always working on those systems year round. And then just, when you're doing these races, especially with so much racing, it's like once you get into the season, it's almost like race recover for quite a bit. And then it's just kind of tune up stuff going into races to kind of like, all right, let's just keep everything sharp. Just do just enough just to kind of maintain the fitness. Like you do a massive racing block and you'll come home and it'll be like, all right, we got, 3 weeks till the next race, and just like, all right, kind of recover, absorb that, do a week of like volume just to keep it going, and then lay off the volume a bit and just do a lot of, intensity just to stay sharp and just maintain, because it's hard, especially when you have a schedule. Like the schedule's always changing. It's like, oh, W52 is out of the Tour of Portugal because of a doping scandal, and an invite pops up. All right, we're going to Portugal in a month. We couldn't always plan the season ahead and just be like, all right, July, that's where I'm going to take, a week completely off the bike and reset. We didn't have the luxury of pulling up a spreadsheet in January and knowing our exact race schedule. So it's kind of just a lot of just maintaining fitness and just trying to sneak in rest where you can. Even with crits, that's like the past couple of years. We've got more predictability just invite wise. We know we can do crit we want to do, basically. So you can plan it more and get that like needed, like, all right, full reset after this race block. Yeah, and just kind of do a lot of work going into this season, and then just try to basically just maintain, because I haven't, like, especially this year, like there's a lot like of work this winter going into Redlands, which was the first race. But then since like nationals in May, like I haven't had like a 7-day period where I wasn't resting or racing
Wow.
since May. So now it's like August, and like between Littleton and Gateway, I get to train, and I'm like, oh, sweet, I can get better. Like I can like actually like pick things out that I want to improve and get some like good volume back in the legs. Because the way the schedule works out, like the sorry if I'm rambling, but this
No, this is good. This is great, man. This is awesome.
Yeah. Like the way the schedule is worked out, like this year and last year, like there's so few road races in the schedule. You know, you have Redlands, Joe Martin, and Nationals, which are, you know, all in the first half of the season. And this year we didn't have Joe Martin, and Nationals was even earlier this year. So it was like, okay, you know, in the winter, and like I really enjoy road racing, and you know, I love crits, but like I still wish there was a lot more road racing. So it's like the few opportunities we get to do a stage race, like I really want to do well at like the few opportunities we have. So like I to use the winter. All right, I'm training pretty similar to wildlife, I guess, if we had a bunch of stage races, and then once we get through Redlands and Nationals, it's like, all right, there's no more road racing. Then I can, you know, cut the volume back, just because that's not needed for the crits that we're doing, are not needed as much. Still needed, but not as much as if we're doing this kind of stage racing. So you can cut the volume back and then work on that intensity and really dial in like the VO2 and the sprint work kind of throughout the season, and just kind of maintain that even as you kind of lose that you know, endurance strength, which, you know, if you start losing that that type of fitness after nationals, it doesn't really matter, because there's no more road races that we're doing. Like Bucks County is like 2 hours 15 maybe, and like that's late in the season, but like, yeah, that's the longest race I'm gonna do since May.
Wow. Man, I have so many questions. That was this is, you're definitely not rambling. Like, this is what is like, just to hear how you think about training, your process through all that. I mean, that is what I think is the most interesting parts of these podcasts. So Stephen Bassett always says, like, dude, I feel like I'm going to go on some tangents. I'm like, please, that's so, yeah,
Yeah.
don't feel like you're rambling at all.
Yeah.
When you had made the comment of, you know, you're doing this training that old school wise, yeah, people, I don't feel like we're ever doing VO2Max, neuromuscular. I think there's a little bit more of people sprinkling that in from other athletes and just other people I hear, you know, online and stuff. When you then made the comment, hey, I'm just really tuning up and maintaining for those races that are coming up, do you feel like you can do just a tune up because you've done all of that work beforehand? Like, the one thing that always didn't resonate well with me when I'd hear kind of thought leaders in the space maybe 10 years ago say, oh, you know, anaerobic capacity, just do a few tune-ups and you're ready to go. It's like, well, what if this athlete's not really good at that? Like, you can't just like tune up 1 minute power if you haven't worked on it and you suck at it. So I think it might be a smart move of you maybe, you know, you're doing more of that in the winter. Like, am I hearing that right? Do you feel like that's why it works for you, just to be able to tune it up because you still have that in your back pocket from winter training sessions? Or is it, I don't know, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think once in the season, there's not really, especially like I was, you know, chasing the ACC, so, you know, trying to do as many of those as possible until I had an injury, which kind of, you know, ended that goal for me. But like with the season and how much racing there's honestly not much time to really work on a specific thing if your schedule is is that busy. So yeah, I'd go into it like, all right, I need to go into the season, just ready to go with everything. And if you need to have, and like, I just want to be good at Redlands, which is, there's, a 1 minute, it's pretty much Highland is like a 1 minute watts per kilo test. There's a crit, sunset is hard, that other day is hard. And, I'll go as easy possible in the time trial to make time cut. But like, I just wanted to be good at that. And so having the stage race early in the season is nice, because having that as the goal is that gives me the motivation to like, all right, I need to have everything dialed as I go into Redlands. Because after that, there's just not time to like fully get like a volume block in. If I wasn't like ambitious trying to add on these, races and chase the ACC stuff, I could stay at home and work on these specific things to get ready for, the next race. Like, all right, I know, Salt Lake is that second day has a hill on it. Our, Crybaby is coming up, and we all know what Crybaby is like. But like it was like Nationals, Somerville, Armed Forces, Tulsa, back to back to back to back, like on the road. And like when you're traveling and racing and recovering, it's like, all right, I need to go. Like, you can't really choose how you're going to be at Tulsa. It's like, I'm going to go into Nationals good and just like recover, open back up, hit the next weekend, recover, do some actual training during the week. But it's like, you don't have that much say in what your legs are going to be like at Tulsa, because you don't have that many options in what you can do in between while still being good every weekend. So you could sacrifice a weekend, just be like, all right, I'm just going to train through Armed Forces, or I'm going to train through Somerville. Like, you could, do something like that and just kind of like sacrifice a weekend so that you can do more specific work. But I didn't want to do that. So it's kind of just like, yeah, I mean, I think I'll be good at Tulsa. Not like crossing your fingers and hoping it all works out, but like, yeah, it's just kind of at some point when you have like a block like that, or a season as busy, it kind of just like, it is what it is. And if you've done the work in the winter before, then, you can be confident that, like, racing is hard and racing is good training. Like, there's nothing you can do in training to like replicate a criterium better than going and doing a bunch of criteriums. Like, it's just, you could do 3 hours and then do VO2 work in the fourth hour of your ride. You could try to replicate just like fatigued intensity and stuff. You could do all kinds of stuff, but like, just going out and doing crits is like, it doesn't get more specific than that. And just like the mental side of it, of getting in the zone and the flow and fighting for wheels, and just like that part of it, like that part you can't replicate at all. So like you can, like, it does kind of work out where like, all right, yeah, the racing is the best training that you can get. It's kind of weird. Like, you'll do like a Toad series and you'll be racing, every night, and you'll just watch like your CTL just drop throughout the week. Cause if you're only racing for an hour each day, it's like, all right, the maximum TSS you can do is 100. So it's just like, yeah, I'm going to have 6 days of racing. Like, the most I can get is, 600 TSS, if I'm not like training in the morning or something. So that can be kind of a bit of a head scratcher, not a head scratcher, but like, oh man, I'm doing all this races, but I feel like holistic fitness as I go through here. And then, so like, yeah, and you get like a window. It's like, all right, I can, get more volume in. And that's something I think I want to work on for next year, is capitalizing on when I can get that volume in between races better. Just so I don't feel like I'm running on fumes late in the season. So like, yeah, trying to figure out where you can get that rest in and trying to figure out where you can get that volume in, because if you're racing, you're getting the intensity. It's easy to get the intensity when you're, on the road, training in between races. But yeah, finding the time to get the volume in, I think is something I want to do better next year.
Cool. What type of neuromuscular workouts do you do? People love specifics.
Big power. I do one from Grant Holicky, coaches me with Forever Endurance. I don't know. This is a fun one. Him and Neil Anderson wrote it when they were on at Apex. The like 30-90s. So just 30-second, just everything you got, like long sprint, and then 90 seconds rest. I think it's like 2x5 of those. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, 30-90s, that's a brutal one. It's like just enough rest where you can like think you're recovered, but you're really not. Just because it's such a beast. Yeah, just a lot of like, pyramid work, like 30-second to 2 minutes, and then back down and hitting, you got that, kind of, just barely above threshold in the middle, and then just hitting like that super intense, shorter stuff on the way out of the pyramid. And just, one of those with like the stem sheet is like that long.
Yeah.
I don't use the built-in functions. I need to get around to that, especially with some of these. I'm an old school. Just I got the masking tape on my garage, and if that's the workout, peel that, put it on the stem. I know exactly all that. Like decreasing rest sprints. Just
like
a lot of a lot of different VO2 stuff. And Grant's really good at that kind of training. I really like his workouts. He's done like a lot with cyclocross athletes like Eric Brunner, and a bunch of people in the area. And that kind of just like the intensity. There's not like a massive sprint, I guess not always at the end of a cross race, but it's a pretty similar kind of over under, a lot of accelerations, which I think he knows how to get those systems like fully firing, which is good for what I'm doing.
That's awesome. Do you know like how much total work you would do in one of those sessions? I'm doing some of the math quick, like maybe like 6 to 9 minutes of like the super hard stuff. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, about that. I think the pyramid, I think I'd say up to like 20 minutes of like with on and off, depending on what it is and how many sets.
Okay.
I'd say like 20 minutes of specific work, not counting like rest in between sets is kind of, I have to look at it and do the math,
cool.
but I'd say it doesn't get more than that. We do a lot of like planning to get the intensity to where I'm not going to be super fatigued for it, so we can actually get like quality work. Like, some days it's like, let's do this in the last hour of the ride, but like, if you smash yourself for 4 hours and then try to do VO2, it's like you're not going to get nearly as much out of that VO2, or you're going to get something completely different out of those VO2s as you would if you're just like, all right, I'm going to smash this VO2 work and then go home, because that was all that we're working on that day. So it's like, it's just a completely, I guess, different ways to attack it, and depending on what you're trying to do, like, one isn't necessarily better than the other. But if you're doing crits, like, I don't need to be 3,000 kJs in when I do my sprint work. I need to be an hour in of floating the wheels. Maybe you need to like do some accelerations and stuff, and then do a massive sprint at the end, or do a massive lead out, or then do simulate ride in the front and just have like a 5 minute or a 10 minute effort. Like, so it's, yeah, trying to get super high quality out of that work is important. And even just like something like, I'm not going to do 5 hours endurance and then have intervals the next day, because I'm just going to be, trashed. Like, well, yeah, like it's just things like that I'll kind of like swap around and do the intense work, and then kind of volume, just so I'm not, I'm not just trashing those intervals basically.
You for VO2 stuff, do you do classic stuff? You mentioned 5 minutes. Do you do more of those? Do you do 40/20s, a mix of everything?
Yeah. Definitely quite a bit of everything. Yeah, like 40/20, 30/30s, 20/40s, like even just like a pyramid within that, and then back out. Stuff like that. A lot of like over unders. Just kind of, call it like 5 minute over unders, just lean into it for 30 seconds, settle in at threshold, and then lean into it again at the end, like trying to, get that comfortable at threshold after making, a big acceleration. Just, trying to recreate stuff that you'll actually see in the race, which is cool. But yeah, just a lot of variability in what I'm doing. Just, yeah, I definitely see that I'm doing more VO2 than a lot of people, I guess, which makes sense if doing crits is my thing.
Do you like the variability from a mental standpoint, or do you feel like just being able to hit different variations of workouts helps you like actually as a ride, like actually riding, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, physically, it definitely. Well, I don't know. I guess I can't say for sure. I think it helps. I mean, I've never done just kind of like one type of like VO2 work to say for sure. I've done testing, but yeah, I think it helps, and also just mentally, just kind of have so many different ways to work that same system. In my mind, I'm going out and doing a completely different workout, but it's really working, the system in just like a slightly different way. So yeah, just even staying fresh mentally, and got 30/30s for the 8th time this month. So yeah, that can get old. So yeah, having different ways to get that same work or slightly different work, yeah, without going nuts, and just pulling a different masking tape off the workbench, putting that on the stem, come home, put it back where it goes, and see which one I've got to pick off the workbench for tomorrow.
What's you brought up nationals? What do you think of the new course?
Nationals was good. It was hard. I mean, I think the biggest thing, it was an extra 40K from what it was in Knoxville, which I think after the first year in Knoxville in 2017, like I don't know that there were more than 25 finishers. And they decided to add an extra 40K. So yeah, it was definitely like, all right, well, they're doing everything they can to make sure, a World Tour rider wins nationals. Which, if that's, yeah, that probably makes sense. Make it as hard as possible so you can, see the jersey on the tour, which, it was cool to see Sean, win that race, and, use that to help his, tour campaign. But yeah, no, going into nationals, it's kind of like, well, I've done Redlands so far this year and a few crits, and, how many race days do these World Tour guys have? And even like, teams like Echelon, who have like a busy schedule in Europe, like just they've got race days, kind of like similar to Wildlife. You'd come back to the States with race days and be racing people. We just don't have that, and it's just clear. But at nationals, it was like, all right, our only chance is to get out ahead of it, get ahead of the race, so when the World Tour guys go, they're coming up to you, because like, I don't know, you see McNulty when he went, I think it was 4 people who could follow when he went across to that move. And this is like in like the third of 10 laps when like the race was done. It was down to like 15 people, you know, four laps into a 10-lap race. And so it's just like, yeah, I know I can't go with McNulty on that climb. Like, it's so steep. Even if I'm on his wheel, like, I'm just gonna get ridden off the wheel. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. So like, I just raced it. Like, I need to get into the break. And every time I'd find myself in the break, and then one of the World Tour guys would just absolutely nuke it, and you know, they'd bring however many guys up, and then, you know, it'd swell again, and I'd have to go again. And then, finally we got a gap big enough in a group where I followed Nielsen, like barely made it across to the group following Nielsen. And then, McNulty went on the first climb and, you know, brought 3 people with him, including Sean. And, you know, that gap was like, they came across like a 1.5-minute gap in like half a lap. And then it was just like, okay, I'm going to do what I can to get out in front of this group. But like, that was pretty tough. The race was over like 4 laps in, and then I think it blew up. Like, that group blew up like 5 laps in, like on the start of the 6th lap up the first climb. And then I was just like alone for 2.5 hours, just trying to like, all right, if I keep going, maybe I should get a top 10. But weird, not a weird race. But yeah, when those 3 guys are just so strong, like, there's only one way to race it. Like, if you race it like you're a favorite, then yeah, you're not gonna be able to follow. I wouldn't be able to follow when they actually make the move.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great advice, though, for people that are in the amateur ranks of going to a race where they know there's maybe like, you know, one local team that just crushes everybody. Sometimes people just sit around. It's like, okay, you're trying to think through this at least of how do I even have a chance at this race? And I think that's just a good thing to pass along to, especially people who are just getting into racing. It's, you know, you made a comment one time of, it actually might have been Tour of Turkey where you guys went in with the plan of, hey, we're going to try and go in and get this KOM jersey. And afterwards, I think you had said it's not very often in cycling that you make a plan and it actually like works out. But I think I think sometimes people go in like, oh, well, these strong people are here, we're just going to get shelled. And it's like, well, there's ways to play the game. Like, you just got to think about some things, and it might not work out, but at least trying to think through it is super valuable. Would you do anything different for training next year, or is it, let's say it's the same course? I don't know if they've announced that, but if it is the same, any other things that you can put out onto the internet now?
I don't think I'd do much different. I
Same
don't
strategy?
think, I think so. I mean, I don't think there's a way, unless I'm like going to the Caribbean to get like random, you know, stage races done in January just to get more racing in the legs and more depth at that kind of, you know, distance. Or like if I'm with a team that's racing in Europe, you know, doing a bunch of stage racing before, you know, I could probably maybe come in with more confidence that like I'll be able to, you know, follow those guys 3 hours in, 4 hours in, 5 hours in. But yeah, I don't think if I have the same schedule next year, and you know, Redlands and a few crits are the only racing that I have done before nationals, like I don't think it makes sense to race it any differently. Otherwise, just kind of playing into what they want. You know, it's kind of like when you know those guys, you know, that level of, you know, the Matteo, Brandon, Nielsen, Magnus, like that level of riders there, like you got to think, all right, how can we make this as hard as possible for them? And even then, like, they're still going to be so much stronger, like we saw, even with, you know, 10 guys going up the road and then having to come across. It's like, well, yeah, that's the thing with the extra 40K. Like, you have legs or you don't. And like McGill had a great ride, you know, showing that he had, you know, the ability to race them that deep in the race. But Um, yeah, if you don't have that depth to race guys like that 4 hours in, then yeah, I think you just have to try to get ahead of it, and then once you're unable to get ahead of it, then the race is over pretty much, and you're just surviving.
Yeah. Talking about depth and thinking back to when you were talking about CU Boulder days, do you think it's possible to get that depth needed these days to try and make it to the world tour while going to college?
It's tough. I think it's possible. It's just time management really, and how much time you can put into training while being a full-time student. And it's also like how much racing you can get while being a full-time student. Um, like it was, tough even just doing the US stuff while in school and training enough to be good at Joe Martin, Redlands, and Gila, um, and those races. Yeah, while being a full-time student, and then being able to miss class to go do those races, and reschedule finals to do collegiate nationals and stuff like that. And so just like that part of it can be difficult. Like Sean, like for example, like he did I think a semester at CU, or maybe a full year, and then was just like, no, I'm just gonna fully commit to cycling. Like, don't. I assume he was just like, yeah, I can't really get what I want out of cycling while also, going to school. So it's tough, but it's possible. Because then you look at a guy like Sepp Kuss, like, he just came in to road pretty late. Like he was a really great mountain biker at CU. A good memory of Sepp, like his first road race with CU. It was like a crit in Denver City Park. And I was in a group that lapped up, and like 3 or 4 of us. And Sepp found another teammate, Max Chance, in the field like late in the race. It was just like, dude, you can corner so much better in the drops. It doesn't feel like a mountain bike. And we're just like, yeah. you were just like in the hoods going through these corners the whole time. So like you have a guy like Sepp Kuss, obviously just like a mega talent. Just needed to kind of hone that, but got into it late. Like he was, I think a junior in college when he started road racing. And, you could say he kind of, built his engine after college. So it didn't really, like, it wasn't until I think after he graduated where he was, like winning races with Rally, and then, tour Utah and stuff like that with Yumbo. But like, I think, yeah, it's tough to kind of get that work that's needed while in school, but I don't think it's necessarily like a disqualifier of ever being able to get to that level. Because I think Sepp is like a perfect example of how it could be possible.
Yeah, that's a really good example. What about off the bike? You in the gym at all? Strength training?
Yeah, doing a bit of that mostly just in the off season, just because on the road so much during this season. It's just tough to justify the gym membership for how little I'm actually able to go. So I don't know, just like it's like free weight maintenance, kind of just honestly just keeping everything strong, even just like for injury prevention. But yeah, in the off season, doing like twice a week gym work, kind of just like deadlifts, squats, and kind of like just isolated lower body stuff. Actually thinking about doing some CrossFit with Joe Lewis, another former racer, coach. Been working with him, been coaching with him.
Cool.
And he's been like kind of my strength coach the past few years. So yeah, he's like a cyclist who's gotten into lifting. So yeah, gonna try out. Started playing just doing CrossFit, just kind of general strength stuff. I'm not always like in the gym with the goal of like, all right, this is going to help my sprint specifically or anything like that. Just general strength. Because even like, I think, that helps when you're like, you go down and hit the ground pretty hard in a race. And then if you're, I think just if you're not strong, like your body can just like react to that impact completely differently to like if you're just have a lot of just like general strength kind of like all around your body. So yeah, kind of try to experiment with that a bit more this year. Yeah, keep it interesting.
What are the isolated lower body things that you're thinking about incorporating?
Just kind of like Bulgarian split squat, like single leg work,
Okay.
single leg deadlift, just kind of um, anything that kind of helps to reduce like the stability of the situation. So just kind of like single leg work, just to throw in, another degree of, stabilization needed. Because like that lateral stuff for cyclists is, like lateral stuff for me, is difficult. Like, I'll run on the beach and like playing football, and I'll just be like, what are these little tendons in my knees? Like I haven't used those in years. Like I've just been, in that plane, my legs just going up and down, like super strong in that direction. But then I'll like just like do something stupid. I'm like, oh, those are new muscles. I forgot I had those. So just kind of like, keep in mind that those muscles are still there and need attention. Yeah, because the imbalance of strength, like if you're just doing cycling, like it's the thing, you can get those, cycling muscles super strong, which, if you compared with, weak lateral stuff, like even that imbalance can be dangerous if you push yourself too hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's underrated of trying to focus on that. And I had somebody from Glute Dopers on here, and they've had some interesting things. When you brought up the word stability and just the concept of we're in this super stiff shoe for years upon years upon years. And even things like how we are on the ball of our foot, because we're never usually on just the ball of our foot. And yeah, they brought up some very interesting points. So it seems like you're on top of that, which would be really helpful for being a total athlete, not just a cyclist.
Yeah.
On the flip side, have you ever done anything that you feel like maybe slowed you down, or you look back, you're like, I don't know why I like tried that, or maybe something in regards to nutrition, or there's always like a fad in cycling, and anything jump out to you about that?
I'd say training, not taking nutrition seriously enough while training, I think is something that I did that, I'm just more mindful now in the past few years. Like, in a race, it's like, I make a nutrition plan. Like, I need this many gels, this many bars, everything. And then on a training ride, you're not going to be as dialed. You're not necessarily going to make that plan ahead of time. You'll get 3 hours in, you're like, kind of hungry, like, I ate what I brought, I need to find a gas station. Well, which direction should I go now? Like, is that one open? Like, and then you're figuring out on the go, and then you find yourself getting hungry, and then the last 2 hours of your ride are going to be pretty garbage because you didn't plan that out. So just kind of reducing the number of days where you're just kind of hurting yourself just because you didn't make a nutrition plan for a training ride. Like, even if it's not like a super long ride, just being more mindful of like, hey, if I don't take nutrition seriously, even on this 2 hour ride, like I'm not going to recover as well, and then tomorrow's not going to be as good as it can be. So like, it's always like, I'm eating for today, but I'm also eating for tomorrow. So just like while training, being able to take that seriously. And I've been working with the feed this year, so I've had like a lot of options and being able to like experiment with what I like, even just like flavor wise and what's easy to get down while training, and stuff like that. So kind of having that that support from the feed has been good because I've been able to like it just helps me to plan it out better, so that I'm not, shooting myself in the foot by, whether it's just being lazy or just didn't think of it and find myself where I'm hungry in a ride. It's like, what are we doing? Why am I bonking on this training ride? I'm like it's gonna take me a few days to recover from this. Like, what, I'd be better off if I just didn't ride today rather than like not planning and finding myself in this spot.
What's the 2 hour nutrition plan? 2 hour ride nutrition plan?
So I usually have carbs and electrolyte in bottles, but I'll still try to go like, you don't need like 100 or 80 to 100, grams of carbs like you're doing if it's like a 5-hour race, but like keeping it like above 50. Because like you can do a 2-hour ride, and if you ate a good meal before, like you're not going to be hungry. But even just like looking at like recovery score on Whoop, like something as simple as that, I don't take too much from it, but just like seeing like when I eat well and do like 50 grams of carbs per hour during a ride and then have like a good meal right after the ride, like even just seeing like heart rate variability, like that's been, I think, the best indicator, or sorry, let me word this, like my nutrition during a training ride or a race and then right after a race has had more of an effect on like HRV than like how hard the ride was. Like if I'm stupid and like come back from a training ride and I'm like in a rush and need to take the dog out and then need to meet someone and do this and I don't get a meal, like I'll find that affects my recovery more so than how hard was the actual training ride. So that's been interesting to play with. And I've been doing like even like post race like ketones, like when you have like 6 crits back to back to back to back and like you're finishing at 10 p.m. and then you've got to find a place that's open to get food, like just like finishing a race and get something in you, just to hold you over until you actually get your like post race meal. Like that's been huge, like just not letting yourself get any ounce of like, oh, I'm hungry, in a race week, is like that's just pretty detrimental to recovery. So just like trying new things to reduce that, because it's simple. It's not always obvious. Took me a while to figure out. You think like, all right, I'll race and then get food on the way home from the race. You don't think that's going to be like huge to tomorrow's performance, but like just trying to limit things like that, because there's every little thing adds up in like any race situation.
You mentioned the feed. Do you have like a thing that people can join? I don't know if this is all feed athletes, like where they can follow your basket or something like that, or am I making this up?
No, I don't have that.
Okay.
No,
Somebody else
let's
has
see if
something
that's a
similar.
thing. Just kind of like
Yeah.
see what we're ordering and using.
It's like I forget how it helped the athletes. So I was trying to get you a plug here, but
Yeah.
okay, maybe it's just I think it was Cole
Nah.
Patton who brought it up a couple, and it was actually maybe a couple years ago, so they might not do it anymore. But what about
I could do it myself, just like, hey, this is what I'm eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
But yeah, no built-in function. So
no, it's all good. You brought up ketones. Any other supplements or anything else you're taking besides the macros?
no, just general. I don't know, like supplement stuff, just vitamin C, D, zinc, omega, just kind of general stuff. I like a lot, like the Thorn stuff that's available at the feed. Nothing crazy there. Try to be consistent with like the beta alanine. That's something I did, a few years ago. But yeah, that's something you got to be pretty consistent with to kind of see the benefits. So yeah, I guess that's the only specific thing. Martin bicarb, I guess, is kind of like a thing I do that's not, I guess, widely used. Pretty popular, but that's one that just sits in the stomach. pretty well. Just trying to eat that much bicarbonate before a race. I think Martin's really just nailed the digestive part of that. Just limiting issues. So yeah, you kind of have to pick and choose. I wouldn't recommend more than like 2 days in like a 4-day window. Which I think is what they recommend, like 2 days in a row max. But yeah, that's been good used like before races.
Cool. Speaking of races, any race that you wish you could replay and do something different, or maybe you learned a lesson from something like, yeah, damn.
Yeah. Crybaby Hill's a big one. That one's like on the bucket list for sure. Was second last year, then third this year. So consistent with the podiums, but like, yeah, the last lap, especially last year, the disruptors, like we had like three of us or four of us in the break, like eight. I think we had three of us, me, Uli, and Sergio Hanal. And we had three of us and nobody was working. And Sergio, I think, rode like the last 10 laps on the front. And Uli was attacking. Sergio was just keeping it fast to keep the breakaway because we had numbers. We were just kind of like confident in my sprint. And yeah, ended up just not reacting quickly enough to Boardman when he went kind of like on the back straight. He's kind of relying, thinking the German guy, I forget which one it was, will close it, and then, didn't close it fast enough. And then it was like, all right, I just got to do this myself. So that's just like and then, from the last corner, to the finish line, there's not too much time to come around anyone. So it's kind of a race to the last corner. And, I was with the German kind of fighting, and Sam had a clean line through that and was able to hold on. But it was just like, especially just with having so many teammates in the break, it was such a good situation. So that's one I feel like I just dropped the ball, like the split second reaction, on the back straight of the last lap, and failing to just like jump on the dude who's attacking rather than just kind of being overly patient, I guess. When it's kind of, I felt in my mind like that was my race to lose. And when it's like that, it's like you see the guy who knows he's like the strongest in the break. Like at the end of like tour stages where the break makes it, like, it's just like, all right, I'm closing that instantly, rather than playing the game of like, I'll let you close it, or I'll let you close it. Like, when it's on you, it's on you. And when you're, you have that confidence, you need to just be able to like, say, all right, it's like how Lamperti rode Crybaby this year, like in the last 10 laps, every attack, like he was just second wheel on the clown every lap, and just, someone would attack and he would just follow. Someone would attack, he would just follow. He's just like, I'm not going to let, one guy go up the road, two guys go up the road, because then the gap's out and it's my responsibility to chase, because, like Luke raced it like he was the fastest dude there. And he was, and he just knew if it was together, then he would be confident in his sprint. And yeah, it just sounded like to kind of, like for me, it was just getting boxed in and not being able to take a run at that final corner like I wanted to. Like I was third wheel out of the last corner, and ended up third. You can start to pull even if you get a good line through that last corner, but it's so tight at the exit, and just not quite long enough to really make up too much ground. So it's, that last corner is critical. So yeah, just Crybaby is one that I want to get the finals right one of these years.
We'll be watching out in 2025. I'll be excited knowing that and seeing where things shake out. Last question for you, man. Anything new in terms of training or tech that you've got your eye on that's like, I wonder where this is going?
Trying to think. I mean, nutrition is nutrition is kind of pretty big right now.
Going on that. When you say pretty big, what's pretty big about it?
It's just hot, it's just hot. Like everyone's talking about it. I think the past few years with road, how much research like road teams are doing on it, how much budget, they're allocating to nutritionists and what's needed in a grand tour. That's trickling down into gravel, mountain bike, crits, kind of all of it. Kind of learning from what those guys are doing. I don't know, it's just like, I feel like it's hot right now. And then, then you see the track cyclists at the Olympics, with these dual layered suits. It's like, all right, there's like a handful of people, me included, sometimes wearing like the ribbed base layers. We don't have like the resources to do testing to see if it's actually faster or which one is faster or like how we can do it. We're kind of just like, well, it's pretty similar to what they're racing at the Olympics and the Tour, so it'll probably be helping me. And depending on like these little nuances of like how long your bicep is or how with your bike position with your arm relative, like we have no idea of knowing if it's actually helping, but we're just kind of take a wild guess and roll the dice. And I'm gonna assume it's gonna make me faster because it's pretty similar to what they're doing at like the Olympics. And so I don't know, just seeing little things like that. It's pretty interesting. It's also interesting to see how people react to it. Like, oh, this guy's got this base layer, so I'm falling behind if I don't have the base layer. Even things like you see people stuffing things down their jersey, just to kind of fill that gap. I don't know. I think at some point we should draw a line of like, it's like, oh, if one person does it, then we all have to do it. It's like, or we could all just not shove garbage down our chests to fill that gap and, use the radio pocket because that's where it is on the jersey, if that's where your radio pocket is. But like, I don't know, some things it's just like, why are we doing this? Like, we're not even in doing like testing in the wind tunnel. Well, I guess I'm not going to speak for everybody. I'm not in the wind tunnel, seeing if this base layer with this right spacing between the ribs is actually going to make me faster. I'm just taking on blind faith because that's the one that this company is selling.
Right.
That it's going to work for me. So it's just interesting how people react to kind of that, like everyone looking for that next thing to kind of get a leg up on everyone else. So yeah, there's a lot. I mean, tire pressure, tires, like everything is being questioned, which is good, and like just industry wide. And we've got like great partners at the Blazers with SRAM and Canyon and Zip, Physique. Just kind of like everything is like super dialed, and like we're super confident in the equipment that we have, and just kind of knowing that like everyone we're working with is pretty innovative, and pretty like just on the leading edge of the industry. So just kind of like having trust in your partners like that, and knowing that you're going to have like the best equipment at the races. Like that's just like a base level of like confidence in your equipment. That's just nice to have.
Love it. What size tires are you running on the road?
28 that measure up to like 30s.
Okay.
I like the Pirelli, the reds, the red label, and then I got the blue, or I guess the gray label, the Four Seasons, which is like their rain tire, which they wear faster, so like you're not gonna want them like year round. Like it's not a winter tire, it's a wet race tire. But those are super grippy. And it's actually kind of seeing that, like taking technology from other fields like F1, just like, all right, let's just make this compound super soft so it grips in the wet, and it's not gonna last as long, but like that's not the goal of this tire. Race tire is different than a training tire, and in the road or in the dry versus in the wet, like you're just going to want different qualities of a tire. So like even just having that, where like improving things where you can, and just like why are we assuming that this tire is best in every condition, and just using it regardless of type of race. So So it's just like things like that. It's pretty, yeah, just having that baseline confidence that like, all right, our equipment's good and we're doing what we can to just make the whole setup faster. Yeah, and having like those wider zip rims where, a 28 is going to blow up to 30 and just like you have that contact and, play with the pressure to reduce the rolling resistance, but having like the confidence and the grip and everything. It all just like plays into your confidence once you get on the start line.
Which is very important. Yeah, I love wider on the road now. I think it's like I
Definitely.
think back to 23s. I'm like, what the hell were we doing? That's so
Yeah.
tiny.
Hmm.
What's Man, you've dropped so many good gems and inspiring notes to people that are just trying to improve at whatever level they're at. And actually, that's going to be my last question for you of like, what is a piece of advice that you would share for any athlete just trying to improve, whether they're going for their first Grand Fonda or they're trying to chase you down next season?
Say just consistency. Um, that's been a big thing. I'm working with like a bunch of my athletes, like coach at BJC, a bunch of juniors, doing mountain bike roads, coaching individual clients with different goals from mountain bike racing to, trying to do the triple bypass, like a 100-mile, 10,000 feet, massive mountain passes ride. And so just, I think across the board, smashing one day of training and just really annihilating that one day of training isn't going to be nearly as beneficial as a consistent week, or, back-to-back consistent weeks. So I think just focusing more on the consistency rather than like nailing one day. I think I've seen a lot in the people that I'm coaching and working with. Like that's, I think, have been the biggest things. Everyone's got obstacles, crazy week at work, you're a student. It's, got midterms, got finals, got things coming up. Like I've got to move, like, you're not always going to have, consistency because it's not, nothing's ever perfect, but just focusing on the goal of like, all right, I'm going to have consistent training days this week. I'm going to have, consistent training weeks back to back to back this month. And then like, all right, leading into the season, I want to have 2 months back to back that are just super consistent. Because I think people, when they're unable to get that consistency, they want to compensate by, all right, I got 2 days, this week. I'm going to do 4 hours, 5 hours each day and just absolutely smash it. And then, unable to touch, like, which if that's, if you have a limited amount of time, then sometimes that might be the best option if you only have 2 days to work with. But yeah, kind of, yeah, just consistency over those just like massive days where you're trying to win the bike race in June in one day in January. Like it's just not how it works. So I'd say that's the best advice for kind of just training for a specific goal.
Love it. Where can people contact you? What's the best way for people to contact you if they want to talk about coaching?
You can email me, Granigan @gmail. Also pretty responsive on Instagram. That's probably the best way to do it. Yeah.
Cool. Put your handle in there. And do you do any other like blogging or YouTube or anything else we should throw in the show notes?
No, not too much. I've got some race footage from this year just on the GoPro that once we get to the off season, I'm going to kind of start throwing up. Cool. Probably just on Instagram, kind of like talking through stuff and like lap decisions and, there's a different viewpoint of what these races are like. So yeah, you've seen a lot of people with some really great footage and, just the more perspectives on, more cameras we can have. And I think it's just such a good learning tool. Even just like film for myself. So yeah, going to try to do more of that this off season.
I think that'd be cool because I think the GoPro era of everyone seemed to, like, creators that I talked to, they felt like everything had to get so dialed and have all these like visual things, but then the commentary shrunk. And then I think it's cool if people just post the, like you said, the last few laps, but like just talk through your thought process. That's where people are going to get
Yeah.
the most out of it, I feel. So I'd
Yeah.
love to see that. I'll be looking forward to those. Is BJC, is that Boulder Juniors?
Yeah. Boulder Junior
Okay,
Cycling. Yeah.
cool.
Team
Good
of,
deal, man.
yeah, this year there were 80 high school aged athletes. I worked with probably about 30 of them, be it mountain bike, cyclocross, gearing up for the cross season now. Of one guy, Desmond in Belgium, racing Hermesses now, and the rest of them gearing up for high school mountain bike and cyclocross.
Cool. Awesome. Everybody check out his Instagram, give him a follow, be on the lookout for the YouTube footage. No pressure, Noah. Thank you so much for doing this, man. This was excellent. And everybody, good luck with your training and racing, and we'll talk to you soon.